success with indoor plants is governed by many different things, such as light and water, humidity, nutrients, the proper soil. And what a better place than Crystal Bridge in Oklahoma City to see just how indoor plants are grown. And joining us is Mr. Jesse Rhode, who is a greenhouse supervisor specialist with Crystal Bridge here in Oklahoma City. And welcome to Oklahoma Gardening, Jesse.
Thank you, Steve.
Tell us a little bit about what the history, I guess, of Crystal Bridge, where we're at and that kind of thing.
Very good. Crystal Bridge is a tropical conservatory. We're in downtown Oklahoma City, and this is just a big, huge greenhouse, a controlled environment. We do have some houseplants in here and some that may be a little bit too big for houseplants, but we do control the environment in here. We have two life zones, the humid life zone, which we see behind us with the waterfall and the fog system, orchids and ferns, such like that, as well as a dry zone, the dry tropic area. It doesn't ever get cold there, but we have a desert type environment in here.
And we're up on a walkway, I guess, that kind of overlooks all of the different plants.
That's correct. We're up on a skywalk about 35 feet above the floor of the conservatory that connects the two mountains, the wet and dry mountain.
Well, Jesse, one thing that I found interesting in visiting with you is a pest management practice that you've incorporated here at Crystal Bridge. Tell us a little bit about what you call it and what you're doing as far as the different practices.
Basically, we use the IPM approach to pest control inside the Crystal Bridge, and the basic concept of this is to get as far away from chemicals as possible. We haven't eliminated them totally, but it's called IPM, or Integrated Pest Management, IPM for short. It involves several aspects or steps. The first step is careful inspection. We have to come out here at least on a weekly basis and inspect most of the plants that are in here, which you can see is quite a job in all itself. What we're looking for is pest problems before they get out of hand. We then move into different types of pest control if we find an outbreak, and we do occasionally have an outbreak. This will include either mechanical controls, it can include release of beneficial insects, it may include just simply hosing down or scrubbing off certain plants, and as a last resort, it may also involve chemical spraying of isolated areas inside the Crystal Bridge with chemical control.
Okay. And those chemicals, there's a lot of options in chemical selection as well, things that are very safe to be using in a situation like this.
Yes and no. Our chemical options are being narrowed down as far as the hard chemicals, if I may call them that. As far as the more organic type of chemicals or mechanical type controls, those seem to be opening up. The market there seems to be opening, and we're seeing more and more coming onto the marketplace.
Well, alternatives.
So, yes.
Well, one thing I think that would be interested in showing is some of the insects that not only you might have here, but also homeowners would have too. Let's see what we've got here. And Jesse, tell us a little bit about where we would look for some of these insects.
Okay. This is a clarendendron, a hardy clarendendron, and we've had it in our greenhouse out back for a little while. And this would be about what a typical houseplant looks like going into the winter time after it's been inside for a while. It's dropped a lot of leaves. If you look down on top of the plant, you don't see anything. So when you go to inspecting, whether in the Crystal Bridge or in your own house plants, you want to look underneath the leaves, because that's where a lot of these guys are going to hide. And I brought this one out to show you. We have three major types of insects here that you're also going to encounter in the home. We have whitefly larvae, and they're very little tiny yellow specks here. They look almost like a scale at this stage. We have mealybugs, you can see the remains of them in here, and also a couple different types of scale. This plant's also notorious for having spider mites, but I can't show you any of those right now. I don't see any. But this is where you're going to find the bugs. You also need to look very closely at the stems, because that's also where they're going to be, and down in the crotches where the leaf joins the stem.
You brought another one along that has a good example of that.
A real good example. And this is a jatropha. It's one of our favorite flowering trees here in the Crystal Bridge. We've got 3 of them planted here, and they bloom year-round. Pretty flower. But if you look real close, we see 2 things. The first thing that clues this off that we have a problem is a sticky honeydew.
Okay.
And you'll find this quite often on your houseplants, whether you have aphids, scale, or mealybugs. They all give off this type of residue. When we start to see this, if we look very close at the stem, we'll see it's just absolutely coated with a soft scale.
And if you don't look closely, it looks just like the stem itself.
You do have to get down close. One of the best tools I have for observation is a simple magnifying glass.
And you know, another thing, Jesse, too, a lot of people take their house plants outdoors during the summer, and a lot of times they're going to bring in those insect pests, and now's the time they're going to start showing up indoors. So they really need to start inspecting. So that's probably the most important key to IPM is inspection and frequent
It
inspection.
is by far the most important thing. And I also do that with my own house plants. And yes,
Okay. What about, you talked a little bit about beneficial insects. Obviously, we don't have any to bring in, but that's an interesting point. In a situation like this, you're able to buy them because of a controlled atmosphere. Now, a homeowner, unless they've got a greenhouse, can't use that stuff.
Not too
That's
many.
a good one that you use here, I'm sure, isn't it?
It is, but not too many folks want ladybugs flying around their living room. So
That's
yes.
true. So we're going to show you a few other things. The basic thing probably to start with would just be some warm soapy water, maybe a couple of tablespoons to a gallon, and a sponge. And again, where are they going to have to use a sponge, Jesse, to get the best benefit?
This is a mechanical control you're talking about, and a very good one. And ivory soap is one of the best soaps you can use for this. And basically, when you bathe your plant, you're going to have to get all over. Being a mechanical control, it's not like an insecticide, but you can just spray at the insect. You have to cover them with the ivory soap. So
On the
wash it
top,
all over, top,
okay,
bottom, stem, everything.
Okay. And then we've got a plastic bag we've put over the container here to show you that you can cover the container, tie a twisty or some kind of rope around it, and you can even stick the plants in the shower with a light spray. But again, I'd have to turn the leaves under, kind of help wash them off, but that's an easy way of doing it as well.
Check your temperature.
Temperature.
Just check your baby's temperatures for you, the water temperature before you put your baby in there.
And most of the time we hear the word tepid, which is just probably more or less room temperature, pretty
Yes.
a little warmer
Yes.
maybe than anything. And then of course the other thing is using just some alcohol and Q-tips, and if you've got a few insects, just rubbing the Q-tip with the alcohol, and that'll help kill them and wipe them off as well.
We've used that here in the Crystal Bridge and had great success with
Okay.
that when the infestation is not too big.
Right. Now, once the infestation gets too big, then you go to some of your other mechanical controls with some of the oils and those things. What did the oils do?
The oils, as compared to a hard chemical, work in a mechanical method. And what they do, instead of killing the insect through nerve poisoning or gastric poisoning, they coat the insect to where they can't breathe. So when you use one of these types of mechanical controls, what you want to do is completely cover the insect with this thin amount of oil or soap. And you're doing the same thing with ivory soap, by the way, to where it plugs up its breathing holes where it can't breathe.
And then the safer soap and some of the other pesticide or controls like that would be the same method again as a soapy water, I guess, only you're applying it
And spray form.
Right, spray form, and you're not having the problem of salt, I guess, too, in some cases, as far as burning the plants.
You have to be careful. Even when people switch over to the more mechanical methods or mechanical chemicals or even the botanicals, you've got to read the label. For instance, safers. A lot of folks don't realize it, but it will burn, like for instance, your crown of thorns. It is phytotoxic to them. So even when you get to these, yes, you still have to read the label.
The other thing, too, is the last resort would be pesticides such as malathion or diazinon, and you definitely want to read the label on those because some labels are different for houseplants, and you'd want to take those outdoors in your garage to spray them, and want to be careful with some of the dormant oils and things, or summer oils as well, because it may hurt some of the furniture or different things indoors if they're not careful. So hopefully we've given you some good practices, which are IPM practices that are practiced in commercial situation that you can use in your home. And Jesse, we want to thank you for inviting us to Crystal Bridge, and we look forward to coming back. And I want to remind you too, again, at your county extension office or by sending us a stamped self-addressed envelope to Oklahoma Gardening, you can get one of the fact sheets on houseplant care, and it will talk about some of the different conditions that are required and a little bit on pest control too. Thanks again, Jesse.
Thanks, Dave.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.